Hello, this is the Willis, Faber and Dumas headquarters in Ipswich, designed by one of the high priests of British architecture, Sir Norman Foster. Say hello to the young Norman, mooching his way through school and uni in 50s Manchester. One particular structure catches his eye. Reflected in the opaque facade of the Manchester Daily Express building is the start of an idea. Fast forward to the beginning of the 70s. It's over for the hippies, and Norman's buildings are the new rock and roll. Big cities and rigid structures are not hip, man, and big corporations are decentralising and packing their bags to headquarters out to smaller towns. One in particular, Willis Faber, were keen to throw their windows wide to a new democratic, egalitarian vista in Ipswich. Foster decided to make a sandwich. That is, a building sandwich. The offices, a delicious filling in the middle, while communal amenities, like a roof garden, formed the top slice, and a swimming pool the bottom. That bread might get a bit soggy. Openness was king in this building, on the surface to help instill a sense of community, but more because it makes it cheaper and easier to move departments about. There were no doors anywhere. Well, all right, a few on the toilets. Democracy, community, openness. Sounds like a political manifesto. However, the desire for this call to arms was commercial. First, an architect gets a plot to play with. Here's the one in Ipswich. See if you can make the pieces fit. The escalators were placed centrally, giving the interior an axial symmetry. The offices were arranged radiating outwards. The irregular pattern of streets and plot shape is one of the reasons and primary generators for the building's curvy facade. Foster called the building a pancake in a pan. It was actually 4 layers, more like a stack of pancakes. Here are the planned sections. Place the layers in order. The swimming pool was eventually used as more office space. Can't imagine the computers worked too well underwater. Foster's landmark glass walls were more like gigantic transparent curtains, carefully calculated to hang under tension. Try hanging them up. Foster and the glass company Pilkington thought that suspending the glass in this way would be stronger because glass structures are at their best under tension. This was innovative. Even during the pre-build, the feasibility of hanging glass like this was questioned. So, was this model for corporate good society sustainable? Maybe in the good times, but as darker economic clouds rolled in, out went the pool and the creche, replaced by more office space. One of the main criticisms of this project was that the social aspect of the building failed in the long term. What would you do? So, what exactly is this building? It's got ramparts, stupendously thick walls, and even a moat. Is it Edinburgh Castle? Don't be daft. It's a Terry Farrell's MI6 building. Terry upsticks from 50s Newcastle via a stint in Pennsylvania to 60s London, where he fell out with his practice partner Grimshaw over a matter of style. Farrell had plugged himself into a cut-and-paste postmodernist approach, mixing materials into collages like an architectural Doctor Who. 80s London, Thatcher, mobile phones bigger than your chest, and Terry's in loads of money, having won a competition to design an urban village on the banks of the Thames. However, with the Cold War stuck in the deep freeze, the Thatcher government moved the goalposts and declared that what was actually needed was a big, secure castle for an environmental government department. Spooky. Farrell assumed that the design should be imposing and an exercise in state power, so he drew inspiration from monolithic buildings like Bankside and Battersea State Power Stations. The design fused together disparate elements in Farrell's trademark style, with concrete and steel forming ancient ramparts, topped off with a glass pyramid. One requirement on the government's wish list was security. Sir Terry certainly delivered that. The whole edifice says, "Keep out." From bomb-proof walls to anti-bugging triple glazing, and even a moat, what was eventually revealed as the new MI6 building is definitively Fortress Farrell. Looking closely at the design, you can see how anyone looking at the building is drawn to the centre. Farrell used some clever tricks in the design configuration, like translation, repetition and reflection, to create a strong and symmetrical structure. In some ways, it's very formal, with layers and layers ordered according to strict rules of pattern. The solid blocks resulting from these patterns create openings for natural light. The contrast between the solids and the voids is central to the character of the building. Making this structure as secure as possible meant that Farrell could raid his postmodern mixed media drawer. The composite material concrete can be moulded or poured into pre-existing spaces. Cement on its own is hard and brittle, but by adding other elements and by changing and layering the mix, it becomes super strong concrete. Farrell used steel as tendons to support the huge beams and walls, which would make the building practically bomb-proof. Farrell's methods meant, like many modern buildings, sections could be prefabricated off-site and assembled like a big, heavy jigsaw. The triple-glazed windows are set deep and bullet-proofed with a special coating. Subsequently, conversations cannot be monitored by radio waves reading the vibrations on the glass. Secrecy during construction must have been a huge challenge, especially with the number of contractors needed to make a building of this size. The original design vision was completely turned on its head when the government repurposed the building. Even so, 2 moats were installed, including a nice fountain, which might have seemed more at home in the original urban village design. It has been widely castigated as very ugly and like Legoland, in contrast to the urban village proposed for the site. However, security was, and still is, the chief purpose of this building. Judging by the way it survived an attack in 2000, the building at least fulfills this purpose. What would you do? If any British architect is associated with big landmark buildings, it's Sir Richard Rogers. Say hello to him and to the Senedd Welsh Assembly Building in Cardiff. Richard Rogers, a perfect name for monogrammed hankies, moved to Britain from Italy just before the Second World War and got his degree from the AA. That's the Architectural, not the Automobile, Association. After a stint at Yale, he teamed up with some of the most powerful architects of his era, including Renzo Piano and Norman Foster. Rogers is known for pushing the high-tech envelope. If that envelope has its insides on the outsides, that's all the better. He worked with Piano on the groundbreaking Pompidou Centre. When he won the competition for the new Welsh Assembly in 1998, a key point of his design was to reflect openness and democracy. At the Senedd, even the Cardiff Bay cod get to look inside. The Senedd, like politics, is designed to be open and transparent. Rogers was determined to make public space integral to the structure. He wanted the streets and square adjacent to be a people-friendly environment. The Assembly's aspect would suggest it comes straight from the water, displaying its inner workings to everyone, a bit like a jellyfish. Sustainability and recycling were at the heart, with the building using recycled water, natural ventilation and an earth heat exchanger. It did, however, miss out on recycling all that hot air from the debating chamber. The bay is a huge, exceptional site with a lot of freedom to create. It's possible to be open and integrated even on a large scale. The plot highlights the close relationship of Cardiff to the sea. Glass walls, slate and timber add an organic feel and an investment of place to the structure. Local materials were used where possible, especially the slate. The centrepiece cowl reacts to its situation by rotating in the wind and allowing for natural ventilation. The Cenith is very much a Rogers building, with its high-tech and inside-out combinations. The construction of the steel was a complex process involving the bending of steel into curved shapes. The parts were put together off-site and erected on-site 2 bays at a time. Rogers employed solid supporting walls below ground and masonry above ground. He placed the curved steel roof construction and the cowl on top. The process to complete the building was torturous. Rogers was even fired because of the increasing costs of the building and then re-employed later with new management and different contractors. The Welsh Assembly government initially overruled the continuation of the building, with the main worry being that the structure was costing 5 times its budget. They eventually proceeded with Rogers' original vision intact. Using the various locally sourced materials was noble, but also caused difficulties. The slate was actually found to be more expensive when sourced nearby. People feel the openness and are drawn to the central chamber and want to look down into the debating chamber. Its combined renewable energy systems halve its running cost. But the build went 5 times over budget. And, of course, a nice view is not actually real participation in government. What would you do?